So, welcome everybody to our traditional book club for Anne Napolitano's Hello Beautiful. We've been talking just a little bit in advance of the recording. And so far, I'd like to, let's see, show of hands. Who liked it?
Oh,
Okay. Medium for
Ah,
Roseanne. I'm glad that
oh,
there's a medium here because, as I mentioned before, I chose this book. One of the reasons why I chose this book was because my sister-in-law just hated it so much. And I have not talked to her about it yet because after reading it because I didn't want to pollute my
well, I
conversation
have
with the
another
rest of
can you
you.
invite her on?
I
I was going to ask her
Oh,
if she could take some time off from work
I
to
would
join us.
love, yeah.
I'd like to speak to her. Well,
Okay,
I have a
so
girlfriend who's struggling through it too, and I thought maybe she would
Wow,
like to come, but I didn't get a chance to ask you.
And
wow.
I also got a message from Carol without an E that said that she disliked it and did not finish. She gave up midway
Oh,
through.
Oh my God,
Um,
I think there's something wrong with me. I loved it.
well,
I
I
really
love
enjoyed it too, but like this is just to
it.
say, right? I like having different points of view, so
Yeah.
we're gonna have a bit of um, a love fest here, but it's really nice to hear other opinions as well. So, Roseanne, I don't think that it's usually one of your characteristics to be shy, but don't be shy with sharing the issues that you have with it.
Now,
Sure, let's get going. Let's start. Roseanne, you want to
I
go
think I
first?
think I think it I tell you, I can understand why they were bored because they repeated. It should have been edited. 300 pages edited.
You
Number
think?
one, I don't have a sister.
Mm.
Yes, because they just kept and I knew I was in trouble when on the bench scene. I knew I was in trouble on the bench when she suddenly fell in love with him. I'm trying to figure out. I read that maybe 12 times, trying to figure out what is it that she loves about him. I can't figure it out. So I knew already I was in trouble then on. So that was really what it was. And actually, the last part of the book I didn't mind because it was more flowing. But no, no,
Okay,
no.
so
I repetition, repetition, repetition.
okay, so
How much could you?
the bench scene that you're talking about is between Sylvie and William,
William.
right? So it's like maybe halfway through the book, or about
Well,
maybe a
when he
third
left
of
his
the
wife,
way through.
more or less, just before he left his wife and was committing suicide.
Yeah,
That bench where
I
she went
should have
after
given a
him.
warning at the beginning that there would be spoilers, but there will be spoilers. The that's okay for anyone who's listening to the recording. And also, as like a little, I also should have probably given a little bit of an introduction. Um, we like how I roll, right, guys? Just sort of generally
Yeah.
fly by the seat of my pants book club. So, so we're talking here about Hello Beautiful by Anna Napolitano. It was published in 2023. It is her fourth book. Her novel before this is called Dear Edward. It was released in 2020, and it's kind of what put her on the map for me anyway. Like that's when I really heard about her. She came out with two previous, whose names I forget offhand, Within Arm's Reach and A Good Hard Look. In those anyway, but the Dear Edward was like kind of the big whoop one. And when she came out with Hello Beautiful in 2023, it was really quickly chosen as Oprah's 100th book club book pick. Um, and it's been being talked about a lot. Lots of different book clubs have been doing this book, and lots of talk about it. And I am very excited to hear about the pluses and minuses, the loves and the hates, because it seems like there are a lot of loves and hates. It's interesting to me, this idea of boring, which we'll get into, of course, through discussion. The story follows William Waters and the Padavano sisters, a group of four, or the Padavano family, really, I guess. Um, Italian Americans in Chicago, working class. William first is sort of incorporated into the family through the eldest sister, Julia, who is very, very self-directed and
Control.
motivated, and like kind of a bit the stereotypical eldest sister, like has kind of all of her ducks in a row and the plans, and very comfortable with dictating these plans, which suits William really well because William is kind of one big loose end. So he kind of, his personality, it's like needs, wants, some is looking for in his 20s, someone to basically tell him what to do, give him a direction, put him on a path. And that's exactly what Julia does. So when Roseanne earlier, like just a few minutes ago, sorry to interrupt, but was talking about the bench scene, the first thought that came to my mind was actually the bench scene that happens when William first meets all the Padavano sisters. So at his basketball game, just shortly after he and Julia start dating. Because, and again, spoiler alerts, I kind of felt like Sylvie fell in love with him then. Like that's when I knew that Sylvie was gonna be like, I feel like there was that indication from the very beginning that Julia wasn't going to be the right fit for William, and that then how is that gonna all fall out? Is one sister falling for the others? Boyfriend who turns into, of course, Julia's husband. There's also a lot of interesting parallels with the Padavano parents, Rose and Charlie. It seems like there's a little bit of dissatisfaction in that marriage. Charlie is referred to often as a ne'er-do-well, kind of a somewhat useless, and yet throughout the course of the story, he really seems to be the glue that holds the family together, which I'd like to talk about also with you guys later as we move on. What you think about that, if I'm completely off base or not, happens. Um, and the different, then there's also the parallels between the relationships between the four sisters and the relationships between the four sisters in Little Women, which they refer to periodically throughout the book. I think that's a good general kind of overview of what we're talking about. And now we'll get back into it of Roseanne, bench scene. Go back.
Well, first of all, I don't have a sister. I only have a brother, and I'm very close to my brother. But to be honestly, I was finding it a little incestuous. I swear to you, I said these sisters are like they're like they're like to get. I mean, this is like now it's my age group, so like I know. So I it's not like it's the 30s or the 20s. So that's the part that I couldn't figure out why it was so. And I just felt that it was I thought Charlie and Rose were very interesting characters, and I was looking forward to a chapter about them somewhere in the to see their because Rose did it was too sudden. Like Rose right away went to Florida, didn't want to look at her granddaughter. All of a sudden, oh yeah, okay, I want to see her. I don't get that. It was a little bit jumpy. Like it was. How come all of a sudden she left before the baby was born, and then she wanted to see her? 6 months later come to Florida or something like that or whatever. Where were the changing of minds? Like how come they changed Rose changed her mind, or I find that. And also the two sisters being very close, and then two sisters being very close. That's very interesting. I didn't mind that, but I just found that every time we got to another chapter and we saw the other characters take on things, again, this love between Sylvie and William. How much could I take of that? Like everything he did, everything she did is like, okay, we love you, love each other. Somehow you found each other, but I just found it. It should have been edited better, and it was too long, and it wasn't credible to me. It wasn't credible. Maybe because I said I don't have sisters, but it wasn't credible. I just found it. Was it worth this all of a sudden falling in love with this guy because she had so many romantic. They said she was very romantic. Well, what was romantic about William? He was a lost soul. She took him under her wing because she was a very
Are you
strong
talking
woman.
about Julia? Are you talking about Julia right now or
No,
Sylvie?
Sylvie.
Mhm.
Sylvie. What what was the attraction? I couldn't figure that out. It was so you know, she was a strong woman, and here was a very sad and very, very sad. And there, I don't mind the character being very sad because it was very sad. His whole life was very
Mhm.
sad. I could deal, you know, I mean, losing a child is, losing a sister was. So what I'm just saying is that I just found it not credible. Okay.
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 So Rona's walked away a minute. Terry, I'm not sure if you feel like talking, or Carol, do you feel like responding to anything that Roseanne
Uh,
said?
No,
Carol?
I just that I was envious of the love of the sisters to each other. I come from a large family, and maybe because I was the oldest, and then there were three boys, and then there was a girl. I never had that relationship, and I thought, isn't it nice to have somebody you can turn to who understands you, who has sustained family background? And I thought the relationship of the sisters was something to really like. You know, I felt badly that I never had a relationship like that. Maybe my brothers did because they, you know, three boys together, ages were close. And but Rona would know more because she knows my family. I don't know if she
Oh,
picked up
your
on that
best
at all.
family in the world. That's bad.
It,
No,
but
but I don't, are you finished? And then I'll just say,
yeah,
I love the book, but I found everything was like to the nth degree. Like if they sisters loved each other, it was like, whoa, did they ever love each other?
yeah.
Everybody just, whoa, everything was just, heightened. Everything was heightened. And not only the good, but belief was suspended when the mother who loved her children and was the best mother all of a sudden left. She left every,
Exactly.
she left the baby. I mean, like, oh my God. The books, it suspended belief for me a little bit. It became more of a, well, I'm going to just look at it as a fantasy because it wasn't real. It started off real, but everything was too heightened. It was too. That's how I felt. Even though I loved it, it was like too much. It was like, there's no way that mother, with the way she was, could have done that. Why did she have her do that? I couldn't figure that out. She was a terrible mother. She just left them and forgot all about them. Who does that? I can't. It was just, but I love the book. I love the book. But to me, it's like a fiction, real fiction, fantasy. Would have been a good Netflix movie.
I didn't get the mother. You found that she was a good mother.
She was a good mother to the children when they were young.
Ah, okay.
She was a good mother. She was an attentive mother. She loved them. But she just abandoned them. She abandoned them. She got pregnant. She abandoned them, went away, and they never heard from her. I mean, to me, I can't understand that.
What about the relationship with the father, who really was was background, and then but how
I
important
thought
he
he was
was?
a very real character. I felt sorry for him. He
Yeah,
was overlooked. He was wonderful, but he was like a schlemiel, like just he's sitting in the chair and that's it. But he's the reason for the title, the Hello Beautiful. I think he really loved his children, but he was overpowered by his wife, sort of thing. He was real to me. He was real, but everybody else was like too heightened. I mean, just and also and then I'll be quiet. William's background, he was born, there was a sister who died at 2 or 3 years old, and look what the parents did. They completely pretended he was never born. Now I can't. To me, the parents should have been so thrilled to have this boy. He should have been the best part of their life. That was also, give me a break. I can't, the way they
But
behave
people
towards him,
people deal with grief in different ways, right? It's an
that is
interesting
really,
thing. It's an interesting thing with that, uh, with William's parents, and we get very, very little about them, right? Um, but that they never recover from it. They never recover from it, and they stay together. And it doesn't seem
but it's
like,
one thing to never recover. Katie. It's one thing to know, but to do what they did to that son,
But
I
clearly it
mean,
wasn't intentional. And again, it's this I did think that it was really interesting, of course, as well as a like as a foil, like as a comparison to the way that the Padavano family operated, right? But the truth is that there are all kinds of different families. There are all kinds, like the Padavanos were poor and they had each other. They were rich in love. And the Waterses were rich and were poor in love and in connection and in anything else. William really, like,
I,
he he found so
I,
much in the
I just
Padavano
felt it was,
family.
she made his parents over the top, completely like it wasn't believable. Like it wasn't. That's how I felt. I don't know. I just felt everything was a little bit too much, too much, too much. I don't know.
Okay. Terry has something.
And I'm not going to say much because I really, but, and I could be wrong in my interpretation, but I thought that Sylvie fell in love with William on the bench, like or when she read, I guess she had read his,
Right. When
Manuscript.
it
what to
was
call it,
reading his
whatever it
memoir.
was.
Yeah.
And I just thought she fell in love, like his honesty and his openness and revealing who he was inside. And most people do not do that. That's why I'm saying we don't know what went on with the mother, because I mean, most people show, there's a facade. Most people. I mean, unless, sometimes with your friends you're not, but we really do not know what goes on in many people, what they're really feeling and thinking inside. And I thought that there was a connection between the two of them there. That's my thought.
I agree with you a lot, Terry. I think that that's very true. Like, we never know what's going on inside someone else's head, even if that person is trying to explain it to us, which in this book, no one's really trying to explain it for most of the time, right? Like, they're trying to, like, especially William, he's trying to be what is expected of him, what will get him accepted, what he's trying to be for the first part of the book. He's trying to be, or for the as soon as he and Julia get together, he's trying to be what Julia wants him to be. He's trying to let her mold him into her ideal guy, because he's like, this is then the path that I will go on. With um with Charlie and Rose, the Padavano parents, what I thought was interesting was that um Rona, I think you just described him as like a schlemiel, like sitting in his chair and whatever. But that to me is actually, that's how Rose saw him. That's how we're introduced to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
As this drinker, this
Right.
kind of like
I agree with
good-natured
that.
drinker who just like doesn't do anything and sits around. But throughout the course of the novel, we see him, or I see
Mm-hmm.
him, as actually being really, really far more integral into the development of his daughters' personalities and support, and his unconditional love and support of each of his daughters, which is contrasted with Rose's. I sort of echo Carol's, like, you think that she was a good mother? Not that she's a bad mother. She's a different kind of mother than I would have said, though, as like a full on. It didn't surprise me. It seemed totally in character for her to then leave.
Oh, I
When
didn't see
when
that.
because she was very stringent. She had very definite ideas of the right way to do things and how things should be done. And if you didn't live up to that, then there was a problem. So that's, to me, was already characterized in her perception of Charlie, who she has had 4 children with and has lived with for how, like, she's married. But there's always this kind of resentment. And then that the difference, again, the way that she sees herself raising her kids versus the way the kids saw what she was saying to them. So, like, the kids all said, right, that she valued education. She wanted all the kids to get education. But when Rose was saying that, what she was saying was, don't get knocked up like
Yeah.
I did. And so then, as soon as that happens with Cecilia, then it's just like, that's the cardinal sin. That's done. You're dead to me, sort of thing. I'm not talking to you. So then, from the leap from the way that Rose was with Charlie to then this bombshell with Cecilia, swiftly followed by then, like, once Charlie dies, and then just like, I'm leaving. This is all of that was kind of in keeping for me with Rose because things weren't fitting into her little box that she wanted things to be, and she couldn't deal with things being outside of that box. In a way, I saw Julia having a little bit more of that, of Rose, as opposed to Sylvie. Sylvie, now I'm going to touch on Roseanne's like um, incomprehension with like the love that Sylvie feels for William and vice versa. I feel like this all-encompassing love comes out of just like finally it is a kind of a recognition when they see each other, so that when they're on the bench together, it's like the first time that I think either of them, Sylvie exceptionally, because she felt like her father saw her and recognized her and accepted her for who she was. But I feel like that's when they feel like they've actually been seen and accepted for who they are without caveats, without like, oh, I would love you if your nose were a little bit different, or if you would just be a little, if you would have just done the dishes this one time, or, there are no caveats. It's just like, I see you for all of the things that you are, good and bad, and I accept that and I understand it. I feel like they each felt really understood by each other in that scene. And this is kind of oftentimes a thread in these in romances, right? Is that it's illogical. I agree, Roseanne. Like, of all the people in all the world, why your sister's husband? Um, but at the same time, there's no rhyme or reason to that. There's rhyme and reason and logic to what you act on, what you decide to do. But for our feelings, there's not a lot of it's hard to rationalize those things away. And then to constantly be in each other's sphere. And then also for William to be seeing like the difference in the way that Julia is like pushing him in one way. She doesn't ask him questions. She doesn't like, she's pushing him into a mold, into a little box, the same way that her mother likes to see things in little boxes, right? Things that will work and continue on in that way. Whereas Sylvie is more her father's daughter, like a little bit more open to seeing the poetry and the nonsense and trying to understand instead of trying to make something be understandable. Does that make sense?
I know. I just found each character, there was the characters did not live up to what the author wanted you to believe of them. That's the best I could put it. The William, what did they all see in him? I mean, and I just find the author loved these characters or felt a certain way about them, but it didn't come across the way the author wanted you to think about. That's the best way I could possibly describe it. Like what is the author seeing about these characters that I can't see? I see them, but I don't see them as deep as she sees them. That's the best way I could. Like, I didn't find William that, I mean, he didn't really, wasn't so like, what did they see in him kind of thing. I could understand that with his
Poor
flaws and
William.
everything. Poor William. And I just thought that, yeah, the character, I didn't really, I guess I could, it's funny, I love the book, but when I think about it now that we're talking, I don't think I really liked I liked the characters, but they were lacking. They weren't who the author wanted us to think they were. That's the best I could
No,
put
I
it.
agree with you.
It wasn't real. They weren't real to I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
what it.
Roseanne agrees. Go ahead,
Too
You
Roseanne.
many
do?
discrepancies. Too many discrepancies. Like she said, you had loving sisters, and yet one married a husband. You had loving parents. Oh God. William, I didn't mind. William was I think William had potential. It's just that he had parents who he was beaten down when as a kid. I mean, that he had really nothing. So I felt. I mean, it was obvious he was going to have a breakdown because it had to happen. It just That was about the only thing that I said, oh my God, that makes sense. But also the father had to die early because he was, I don't know if he was such a fancy father. He called them hello, beautiful. He came down from the tree with the cat, whatever the kid went up on the tree. And there was a lot of love there. But who knows? He killed them off quickly before he could do anything. I don't know. There was a lot of, like Rose, like she said, Rose left her kids, abandoned them. Now remember, Rose was a 30s woman, so she had her. When a girl got pregnant, yeah, well, but she got pregnant. Okay, she got pregnant. It's not like she didn't get pregnant. She got pregnant before. So that's the part. Like, wait a minute, you did the same thing, and a lot of them did the same thing, and well, oh no. Oh.
And this
So
is
that's
it,
what.
right? It's like history. If we don't understand history, we're doomed to repeat it. But I agree. Like, I found that, like, while I didn't find it out of her character to then just be like, okay, enough, because things have to be a certain way, because she lost her relationship with her mother when she had Julia, when she got pregnant out of wedlock with Julia. And they say that they never had anything to do with those grandparents on that side. And it's just like, why would you choose that? Why would you choose that again?
Also a different time. We're not talking about the baby, we're talking the 60s. This is
It's
a different
true.
time.
But at the same time, I think that we know, when we like think about our own parents, right? And how they saw the world,
Right, of course.
and like
That's
what
right.
was acceptable and what wasn't, right? And they
They
would
always did it.
it didn't necessarily reflect the times that we were currently in so
That's
much
right.
as in the. Mhm.
I just found too much too much, like she said, like it was too too intense, and giving up of her sister for the husband. Well, I mean, she was a strong woman. Why? What did she? Yes, he was honest. Yes, she read the manuscript. Yes, he put his heart out. Well, excuse me, she's a strong woman. She didn't have to go for the husband. She could go for she was young. It was just unbelievable for me. Yes, there are many women who go for someone else's husband. There's no question. I'm not sure if it was somebody's sister. I would imagine in families where you could like someone else's husband. I would imagine it happens, especially if you're stuck together.
Mhm.
But people don't give in. But these people gave in. That's fine. I just found it was just
I found
too much.
the family was dysfunctional. They were
The Padavano
dysfunctional.
family.
They were the twins so together and everything. I found it a little dysfunction. I found the relationship between Williams, like everything was just dysfunctional. Like
Oh, I
the
wish that I had
relationship
that
of
kind of dysfunction in my life. That seems like an
no,
okay
but it was like
dysfunction to take.
it was like a little much. Everything was like too much.
That's
You
Because
right.
agree, Rose?
I'm a little bit
Absolutely. I
with
said that.
Carol too, in that, like,
I thought
I
it was
don't.
incestuous. I thought it was incestuous. I myself, this is nuts. This is nuts. Their only friends are their sisters. You think that there was something, there was a handicap, but no, these
That
were
they're the best
normal.
friends, yeah, the family.
And
They
an
lived
artist
together,
having
they
no
built the
friends.
house together, they did everything
Yeah, but
together. They like it was like it
we're
was a
talking
little
about
much.
artist. An artist has no friends. Who ever heard of that?
She seemed to
Who
have
ever heard of
friends.
that?
It's just that most of her, like, her core was with her family, her core
To the
group.
month, to the nth degree, to the crazy degree.
Hmm.
And then of course it all fell apart. It wasn't so good.
It didn't,
I mean, how
though.
good?
But then
Well,
it all stayed
25 years.
together. I think it
well,
all stayed
25
together.
years.
Like, this is, how do you think that it all fell apart, Roseanne? Can you unpack that?
Well, the thing is that the mother ran off, the sister ran off,
Hmm.
the William, and they were all, everything was secret. Like they were all secret in the apartment. They didn't even. I found the ending quite interesting. The last 100 pages, they were real. The sister came to visit, even though she was strange. They didn't go. They didn't tell anybody. They just spent the time with their dying sister.
Hmm.
It was almost like it was, that was real. That was real because people do, when someone's sick, they come together. It brings the family a little bit together. I just found, as I said, I don't have a sister, but I found like she said, they were just too close. Too everybody was just too much. Too
Yeah,
much.
that's exactly the way I felt. Everybody was too much. I enjoyed the book,
And every
but for
time they
what it
went,
was. Carol, what do you
I
think?
finished it.
I'm trying to parallel the two marriages to this guy, William. The first one, she bossed him around, she did everything for him. But the second one, she guided him just like the first one did, but in a much more, in a softer way, I think a more understanding way. She sort of let him make his own decisions. But she also, I found the two sisters were quite, I mean, the two situations were quite similar in that this poor guy really needed a mother figure or a father figure, and he found the first one very she was very definite. I mean, he just filled a role. She needed a husband kind of thing. The other one, she nurtured him, but it was a softer way of doing it. I thought that I can't quite put into words, but I see the situations parallel, but similar. He was a weak man, but he found, first one was a strong woman. The second one, she was strong too, but she was softer. She basically he made his own decisions because she was still
Listen to him.
guiding him, but in a softer way than the first one. And I'm not quite sure if I'm coming across correctly because I'm trying to figure it out myself, but I did find that there was a parallel there.
I feel like
Nobody mentioned the fact that he gave up his daughter. And I found that interesting.
mm,
Yes,
Well,
he was mentally ill, but he gave up his daughter, all the rights and everything. And the reason was because he was afraid that, I thought maybe he was afraid to kill her. I couldn't understand. One point she said something like that,
because
where
of
afraid
his
to
own upbringing,
I think that
his
he
own
thought
upbringing,
he would repeat
Yeah,
his parents'
what his parents
mistakes
that's
had
right.
with
done.
her,
Yeah,
and that she
yeah.
would be better off without him. It's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why he tried to kill himself, right? Is that this is everyone would be better off without me. I'm going to turn everything to garbage that I touch, and I don't want to turn them into garbage. It's one of the like he feels like he doesn't deserve them, and so that when he lives, he's like, this is going to be the best way to move forward is if I still like he while Julia never really saw I feel while Julia never really saw William for who he was. I agree with Carol that it could have been anyone that Julia married. What she wanted was she wanted
To
this
mold
like
him.
she wanted to get like to have the idea of like getting married, have kids, be the wife and mother, etc. Until she thought about it, right? Like until she thought about it and actually wondered what it is that she wanted. She was like, wait a minute, I was really good in school. Be doing, I could become the person that I'm trying to make someone else into being. Sorry,
Mhm.
go ahead, Terry.
I just, no, this is just a question that just reminded me. When she found out her sister was pregnant, that's when she immediately said, I've got to have a baby. Like, was that competition? Like, was that just purely competition or?
Totally, I think there's even a scene like right then she's like, you're taking my place.
Yeah.
I'm the firstborn. I'm the first one to get married. I'm the one who's supposed to have the first grandchild. And in a way, again, that's echoed by Rose, right? She doesn't acknowledge her actual first grandchild and says that Alex is the first grandchild. Like this is it's definitely there was a bit of competition. And again, and I say this without judgment. I am not on in Roseanne and Rona's camp here in terms of not liking the characters. I really liked the characters. I liked that they were super flawed, all of them. Even Julia, I don't know if Julie and I would be friends in real life, but she like I liked that each of their personalities seemed very, very much their own. And yet, as much as their own personalities were very distinct from each other, it's like they it's like they were most themselves when they were together. Like they came as a set. And this is true both with like I feel like this was evidenced when like Julia leaves to sort of be her own person, right? So that she can, you know, advance in her career and raise her daughter how she wants and not have to come back to memories of William and find out what's going on with him and Sylvie and all this stuff. But at the same time, when she comes back, it's like it's like she's a puzzle piece that finally has found her puzzle. She's found her place. This is she needs both things. And in the same way too with like Emmeline's
The
um
other two sisters.
her concern with telling her sisters that she's queer, right? And it's like, but like Roseanne mentioned too, the secrets. One of the things that I also really liked about the book was that it didn't fall back on that really easy, what I consider a really easy writing sort of tool, which is to keep secrets to keep everything going. Different characters had secrets, but then they all told the people that they loved. They did like as hard as it was to do, they still did it, right? And so this was part of William's therapy at first, is just like you can't keep things secret. And then as much as his and Sylvie's relationship kind of starts in secret, then quicker than a lot of other authors I think would have done, then Sylvie tells one sister and then the other, and then of it like there's there's the need for an openness to it so that it's real life as opposed to pretend. Same as with like with Emmeline's queerness, is that like she doesn't, as much as she thinks that she knows that she's queer, it's not real until she tells her sisters. And she can't like move forward until then. She can't be her full self until like her family knows. And this is another thing too with this Padavano family and with William's integration into it. It's like they all adopt him before um even before his marriage to Julia. And that doesn't come with, again, it doesn't have there are no but only for as long as. There's none of that there. Like this family really seems to love with its whole heart. Again, a little bit maybe exceptionally with Rose, but but like there's this whole heart. It's like warts and all. There's a lot of warts and all in that. And that to me, that I think that's one of the reasons why I liked it so much. I feel like maybe I see a lot of I feel like maybe I can be too critical, or maybe like that I wish that I had that ability to really I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I loved this idea of, again, the reality that we were presented with of people loving each other for all of their mistakes as well as for all of their achievements as well as for I really really liked that element of it.
Do you think the sisters were so close because the relationship with the mother wasn't so great?
Well, I have this theory about families, and um every set of siblings that I've ever known who have been very very close, they've been very, very close because of some sort of oppositional nature with their parents or because of some sort of traumatic event that's happened. Again, usually with parents, whether it was divorce or death or, something like that. Um, and I have a feeling that yes, because well, partly like and you would know better than I would, Carol, because I come from a family with two kids and two parents, so we didn't outnumber the grown-ups. But, but I feel like maybe like they already have the four sisters, so they outnumber the two grown-ups, but they bond together through, I feel like a big part of it is through Rose's criticisms and disdains, and like they stand together that way. I do feel like that's sort of the basketball links, right? Like the team sort of mentality. William has the basketball team, and I like that that's woven through it as well, is that the teams like it's absolutely beside the point whether they are currently on a basketball team together. They are team members and like
Mhm.
forever. right? Like it's just like this idea of forever, which that I agree is maybe, well, I don't know about sports, but like I think feel like that is maybe a little bit more fantastical, like this idea of like, but again, it's just such a nice
But it's
fantasy
small
that I'm
town.
willing to
It's
go
small
for it.
town. It's small town. I agree with you. If it was
But
a
this is in
big, it,
Chicago,
no,
right?
but this is Pilsen. It's Pilsen. It's not, it's like,
That's the
a
family
small,
is Pilsen. The basketball team,
what?
that's at the University of Chicago.
That's right, exactly. But it's a small town. So the point is that when he needed help, they're gonna call the team. I thought that to me, that is what a team is like.
I
You
thought that
are
was wonderful, but like Arash, he's not from
that
Pilsen.
I don't
Like
no
none
no
of the other guys.
but there
Kent's not from
no
Pilsen.
no but when he was missing, it was,
Yeah.
we're not talking, he was missing. I mean, they had no, it's all small town mentality. If
But this
you're
is it. It's
missing,
also like the team thing, right? So like there's that closeness of the
that's
Padovano
right.
family and there's the closeness of the basketball team. So while William doesn't have a blood relation family there, like it's the same thing too as like when he goes missing, Julia does not care, right? She's just like she never saw him for who he was. She never saw she had the manuscript. She read some of it, and instead of being um what we hope that someone who loves us will be, right? Which is supportive and there and they want to sort of help us. She was like, "Oh gosh, this isn't right." And she's like, "This isn't fitting into my like what I need." And
I think she
it's
was in shock too. She was in shock. I mean, he had just handed her. He says, "I'm leaving," I mean, and he walked. I mean,
but then she stays that way for the whole time, right? It's not until like even after he's found, like she doesn't go visit him. She doesn't go and I again, like I'm not no judgment really there in terms of her reasoning. It's not that her reasoning is faulty. He left her, but also she was always standing on her 2 feet.
yes, but
And
she said when she came back, she said that I wasn't needed because Luke played my husband's wife. So they didn't call her to tell her to come to. She didn't even. I mean, I don't even. She played her. There's no question. I don't fault her for that, to be honest with you.
I
I
feel like
think she was
Julia was
shocked
thankful for that. I thought Julia was thankful for
in
that,
the
and she
end.
was glad that she wasn't called because then she
Well,
would have
and
had
she
to
did
put
mention
on,
it.
because Julia, say what I will, like, and whatever, like, she didn't put on airs. She didn't pretend to
No,
be
no,
someone that she wasn't at any point. And I
but
think
I
that she
didn't
would
find
have
it
felt that
fantastical.
she had to, if she went there to be, she would have had to be the supportive wife. She would have had to
Right, of course,
be.
exactly. So that's why I don't find it so fantastical. I could see where this can happen, where somebody is such shock of what her whole the life went right down drain. Like what all her. I mean, she was a little bit nutsy fruitsy because she patterned her life the way she wanted to pattern her life, and she patterned the people around her so she wanted, that she fell in love with or whatever, as she wanted it. So all this fell apart, and I think she was in total shock. I didn't find that fantastical. I found that,
Hmm.
wow, and then of course she played the wife. So if they had called from the ambulance, they look, your husband's, maybe she would have woken up. I don't know. I don't know about that, but
What do you
I
guys
found that
think?
it was a bit of a shock.
Katie,
Heidi, welcome. Heidi,
yeah,
welcome.
I'm sorry I'm late. My daughter was here and I had to take her off to the train. So this is the reason why I'm so late.
Never
Uh,
apologize for being late to us if you were spending time with your daughter.
okay, I'm very sorry. And then I had big trouble getting in here today. I don't know. Well, my computer gets changed all the time. I mean, this update and that update, and I'm not very good.
True.
I read the whole book.
And what did you think?
I I found it a bit long. So I found it
Roseanne agrees. Roseanne
a bit
agrees. That's
long.
why she's
It,
giggling.
it was interesting, but I got a bit tired of all these
you know, you see, I come from a very small family. I had a sister, but you know, it was a bit too close up everything. But I
That's
found,
the way I,
you know, everybody was sort of very touchy. You know, my family isn't like that. You know,
I
I have one daughter who says, "What do you want to come? You want to see me again? We just saw each other," kind of that kind of thing. So, but it was very interesting the different mentalities, and what I could understand very well, and I think that was some of the problems. The mother, you know, she was just a European immigrant, and she had certain ideas, and you know, I can't say I particularly was terrifically fond of the book,
Mhm.
but it was an interesting book, and you know, I was happy when it was finished, to be honest.
Heidi, I'm so glad you're here because now we're 3 and 3.
yeah, I agree with her. It's like suspended belief. I don't
You
know if
know,
I
it
could, I
was
could,
just a bit
the
too
sisters
much.
and the relationship, and it was just all like, how could that be? I didn't relate to it, I guess, for some reason. Maybe it's our experience that we have, you know, like I have a sister too, and I love her and we're very close, but like, are we like that? No, like that. I found it was just all too much, too much. I found everything too much, but that's just,
Oh, you
we
did
come
too.
from our
I'm glad
experiences.
because I felt kind of bad. You know, I just found it was unusually close. You know, it,
I called it incestuous.
I wouldn't go that far, but it was over the
Those are
top.
the
That's
first
all
words
I
I
could
said
think of.
when those are the first words I said. What did you say? I didn't hear you.
Who,
Rhoda
me?
thought
Over
that
the
was
top.
Rhoda
Oh.
said just that she wouldn't go quite that far, but that's
no,
That's
but
over.
you
I
know,
Yeah, no, I don't think it, I didn't think that, but I thought it was a little creepy. I thought it was a little much. I really did.
it
Over the
was
top.
I'd
really
take
too
it.
much,
I
and
would take it.
it was
Sorry
not.
about that, Katie, but you see, you come, I think it's our experiences that we have with the our sisters or brothers or family. We come to these books with our fixations and our thinking what it should be. And when we hear something that's completely out of our realm of possibility or what we experience, then we just can't seem to go there. We sort of like suspend belief. I think that could be part of what. Do you think so, Katie? I don't know.
I mean, I guess yes. I mean, like our experiences, of course, influence our perceptions, etc. But like, I mean, I have no sister. My brother and I like my brother an awful lot, but we're not
Mhm.
particularly close.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder if that's because we didn't have enough of a fight against our parents, like some way to
Uh,
like bond that way. My mother, which she might watch this, so hi, mom. Um,
Yeah.
I cannot imagine my mother ever behaving the way that Rose did. My mother, I think, is a
Did
lot
she read the
more.
book? Did she read the
Pardon?
book?
I don't think so. I did talk to her about it the last time that I saw her, but I don't think that she's read it yet. She's been reading a lot of other stuff. She's more the same kind of things that I read when in my garbage reads than what I call my garbage reads. But I think my mom has a lot more of Charlie in her than of
oh,
Rose. She, of
But
course,
your
has
mother
her.
is probably much younger too, and a different
Oh, for
generation.
sure. But
I understood the mother very well. You know,
mhm,
I grew up in a Germanic household, and you know everything, you know, and you were criticized all the time. Your heart. I mean, I never got any say, "Oh, you did this well." Never. I don't remember this. Luckily, I was sent to boarding school, and you know, there it was really great because you know we had certain limits, and
yeah,
as long as you stayed in the limits, you were fine. And even if we snuck out because we wanted to go to the movies, there was always one nun, and she said, "It's okay. I let you in through the church. You know, don't worry." So, you know, and I had only one sister. I was very close to my sister, very, but it was just over the top.
Mm.
That's exact. I'm
She-
close with my sister too, but no way, no way, the way it was. But it's a book, it's a fiction, you know, I guess you
I
have to,
know.
I don't know.
Terry's got
But they,
something.
no, I don't think they appeared very close and they were very close at times, but they weren't, I mean, what I had said before, the fact that she was jealous that her sister, was pregnant and she, that normally you think she'd be happy, yes, she'd be
Yeah.
concerned for her sister that, but she'd be happy for her. But she wasn't, her first thought was, I've got to have a baby, so also the fact that Sylvia, is that her name? Sylvia,
Yep.
like she hooked up with her sister's husband. I mean, now I think she saw that they really were not happy and her sister really didn't love him. I don't think she would have done it if she thought they were really having a very good, loving relationship. I don't think she would do that. But she took care of herself. She didn't think of her sister. She took care of herself and started seeing him. So I'm saying it doesn't show that they're so very, very, very close. You know,
Like
I
she
think that,
did, Sylvie did wait. Like there's the technicality, right? Like
yeah,
she
she
did
did wait,
wait
but she still
until,
did it.
yeah,
Some
she
people
still
would
did it.
just never, even if they care, they just would not do a
Well, it's
brother
very much
sister.
that Romeo and Juliet thing, right? And also, again, Little Women, right? With Little Women, we had the four sisters and the boy, right? Laurie, who came into the family. And first, he was in love with Joe
Yeah.
of the sisters, and Joe spurns his advances. And then eventually, he ends up marrying Amy. Now, like,
One Direction. Where you have to
oh,
get
sorry,
like
I thought that was a question, but it isn't. Like, there's I read an interview with Anne Napolitano, the writer, and she said that when she started writing the book, she wasn't trying to draw parallels between um, Little
Little
Women
Women.
and the sisters, the Padavano sisters. It just sort of came out organically, but they're definitely there. Like whether or not it was intentional, they were definitely there. These
and the floor just gets done with it too.
the weird it is weird, like these sort of connections. I agree with Terry in that, like, while the sisters are, i I do think that they're very close.
Yeah.
I Their closeness doesn't bother me. I don't consider it incestuous.
Mhm.
But they're close, but also they still all live their own lives. They don't really like change who they are to, and that's something too, is that like as much again, there's sort of freedom to this, right? Is that like Sylvie does still choose William. She's given, like, William is who she realizes that she's in love with, but she could just not act on that. She could just stay alone. She could be with other people or stay alone, right? And continue on her path, whatever. But then there's this, again, this feeling of kind of dishonesty about it to her, and that like it's not a life fully lived when you're denying part of yourself, in the same way that, or in a similar way to, again, with Emmeline. And those parallels are kind of drawn too, right? Is that she could never admit to liking women. She could either marry a man or be alone or whatever, but there's something more there, and that the sisters support each other even if they don't understand it or feel the same way. Again, and it may be fantastical, but I love it. I love this idea of, like, again, loving someone entirely for who they are. It happens so rarely. It
Mm.
happens so rarely. And if we could do that more,
Mhm.
like, instead of trying to change the people who we claim to love, as much as we think it's for their betterment. If we could, I don't know. I agree with Carol too, that like while Sylvie and William, like, they coexist together nicely. She she does operate sort of as a guide, but it's as a guide for William, not just as like a placeholder man, right? It's like she sees William for who he is. And so when she's supporting him in the ways that he actually needs support. And she's got helping to guide him in the ways that he needs guidance and strength. Whereas Julia was looking at the things that needed doing more, just as this
That
is,
she thought needed doing.
yeah, exactly. And the thing is again, like from my perspective, with if Julia were to have found a partner who complemented her, it would have been someone who had a lot of drive and
Mhm.
that they could have moved forward together and supported each other that way with their like ambition and drive, as opposed to like not that William's a milksop, because he has his passion too, which I will also admit, I don't know if you guys do this. I feel like everyone does, but maybe it's just me and I'm lazy. But with sometimes when I'm reading books and they get into details about things that I don't really care about, I do skim a little bit. And I skimmed a little bit in the very basketball-y times. I don't care enough about sports and I don't care. I don't need to know. I just need to know the closeness of the team.
Thank
But
you
I
for
find that
thank
sometimes.
you for admitting that, Katie. All too often. Can I ask a question? Did you find the title of the book the right title? How often did we hear him say "Hello, beautiful," or did I skip that?
Hidden. That was real. I was wondering where that title came from. And then, of course, we realized it came from him. It was like a very hidden title. There's no question about it. You never think it would be about, the title, Hello, Beautiful. To me, like I've said this a few times, if I would have seen this title and it wasn't a book club book, I don't know if I would have read it. I would have thought it was too surface, or maybe about the modeling industry, or but I thought it was interesting that she made it the title. I did.
I
I
like
did.
I like that title
Mhm.
because it sort of really put um, my language is failing me. It
Take your time.
it's really the father,
Yeah.
and we find it out much later. I mean, the Hello Beautiful is only twice in the whole book, when the little baby was born,
No,
and then towards the end. But I like that title because I think the father was a very, very central figure in everybody's life.
Yes.
And it really puts
well,
stress.
why didn't the author expound on that? Why didn't she expound on him? He should have been, we saw so little of him. We realized what he was, but she should have brought him out more as a character, I thought. I think she
But it was
should have
his
done that,
influence.
rather than going over and over with the daughters and how close they were and everything. I mean, there should have been more about the father, maybe more about the mother, more about Rose. I just felt it was too much about the sisters,
Yeah,
and
but as long as the father was alive, really had very little to say. He was just sort of, I think he did. I mean, he was not, well, the Rose wasn't very happy
but
with
he
him.
had a big influence on their
And then
lives. He was
he
very
died
influential
relatively
in their
early.
lives.
But he
Anyway,
died early. He died early, and that may be another reason. You know how we fantasize about the people who died early, that they were fantastic. Maybe if they had lived long enough, they wouldn't have been so fantastic. Who
But
knows?
this is it though, right? Is that Terry mentioned, and Terry, am I stepping on your toes? Do you want to say something?
No,
Okay.
me? No.
Yeah. You, Terry, the other Terry, you. Um, Terry mentioned in that exchange, it was his influence, and that's what I think as well. I think that I think it's actually a gorgeous title for the book because it is very much Charlie. It is very much the father who I think that when we first meet the family, Charlie is treated like he's a side note. Then, but as we see throughout the story, he really is woven throughout. His influence was not an influence that was shoved on the girls that he raised or on William. It was like he or on the people who, all the people who attended his funeral, who talked to the family about how important he was to them. It was a quiet sort of just acceptance
Secret.
of who he was. He was who he was, and he treated people for who they were. He accepted everyone for who they were. He accepted Rose for who she was, all of her disappointment in him, and he still loved her. And he loved each of his very different daughters in different ways. And that came out, and that came out and is exemplified by his Hello Beautiful. It's like, whoever you are beautiful. And part of that too, I think, and of course I'm totally biased in terms of poetry, but is that his root in poetry and his love of poetry as well is this ability to see um, disparate things that may not seem like they agree, or things that maybe don't seem like they should be beautiful as being beautiful because they're real. And that he didn't love the imagined personalities of his different kids if they had only been like this or that or the other thing, or of his wife if she were only less demanding, if she was only, he loved the world for how it was, good and bad and ugly. And so that Hello
You know
Beautiful
what,
being
Katie, can I
woven
just say
through,
something? That's your I find
that's my
I
interpretation. Yeah.
wonderful interpretation, and you got that. But and I understand, and you're right. But to me, it should have been brought out more. Why was it so hidden? That's what I'm saying. And maybe did she want the reader to interpret it in their own way? You interpreted, I interpreted it too, but not the way you did. Like I didn't think he was so much. If I read the book a second time, maybe I would, look for that. But I found that was too hidden. He was too hidden. Why
That's
didn't
right.
she bring out all this about him? I think that would have been, I would have been, I don't know, it would have been more real to me. Why did she hide him?
But
So
I
you could
think because
interpret.
one of those reasons is because, like we said at the near the very beginning, is how we never know what's going on inside someone else's head, what's going on. And like when we live our lives, we live it, people come into it, like the kids saw their dad as a footnote as well at first, right? Like
Mhm.
they didn't see him as like he wasn't the main parent. That's, I don't think that's how they thought of him. And in the same way, it's like different things come out the more like you learn things as life goes on. You like, oh, that's how it happened for you, or like, oh, maybe like the I think that there's, to me, the reason why, or I don't know if there was a particular reason why he wasn't brought out, but I'm glad that he wasn't. I guess from my own perspective, I like that it was like little bits being revealed kind of as time, because that's the way that we live our lives. He didn't stand on a soapbox and say, well, this is how it
No,
should be,
he didn't
because
have
that
to,
was also,
but he was so quiet. Like he was like almost not there. He was like so quiet,
and yet,
maybe that was the whole point of it, but maybe I don't know. I guess everybody thinks of it differently. He
yeah.
was a very good, he was like a terrific character. He was one of the better characters, and I would have liked to have heard more from him and less from some of the characters I did not really believe in. I don't
But this
know.
is, I think, part of it too, is that it's this, like the loud voices often get heard, right? Of course. But he was a quiet voice. He was always a quiet voice, a quiet and steady voice.
Yeah.
Like that didn't change. And even after he passed, that didn't change, kind of in terms of he was a quiet, steady presence kind of throughout.
And he was a steady present for everybody,
Hmm.
for everybody.
Except
The
that
other thing I
also
really,
he was too quiet.
Pardon?
Sorry,
What'd she
Roseanne,
say?
just one second.
He was too quiet because if you notice that when she got pregnant, the little one got pregnant, he didn't say to his wife anything. He didn't respect, but he went to visit her in the hospital.
Mhm.
But he didn't say anything. Didn't say. So I mean, he was quiet, but I agree, and I think he was a very amazing character. That's why I was disappointed there wasn't a chapter about him, except that he was too quiet, because when his wife and everybody,
Oh, I
no,
feel.
that's it. He went to visit her in the hospital. That's the, he didn't fight for his daughter, and that part I found strange too.
I don't think he needed to fight for
Especially at
his
the
daughter.
funeral.
He never lost his daughter. He
No, I
stayed
never
with.
say that, but he didn't. He didn't say to his wife or the fat.
And he didn't fight
Listen,
for her. He
he
didn't
didn't fight
fight
for
for
her.
her.
I'm
That's what
sorry,
it was.
he didn't fight for her, and
But
that's what
That's
I'm
what
saying is he
But
fought for other people in the funeral. They said how many people he supported and everything. Well, meanwhile, his own kid he didn't. So
he
yes,
did
he was a
support her. He
But he
didn't get
went to the hospital.
involved. He didn't get involved in Cecilia's relationship with Rose.
well.
that's right.
Excuse me.
That's not his business. He
But
accepted that that's their relationship. That's for them to deal with. He kept his
that's right. And
relationship with Cecilia.
I think a lot of people don't understand. This is a very European way to do. The men usually, certain things are left to the wives, and the men, they try to stay out of it because it only causes conflict.
Mm.
And he did support, I think, all the children, but in a very quiet way. But he didn't interfere basically with Rose. He didn't want to interfere because it would get her more upset. Because she was upset and he knew it.
And he also didn't interfere in the relationships between the sisters. Like, I
No,
don't
he
think he
didn't.
ever tried to be like, oh, you should do this with your
Yeah,
sister, or you should do this, or I don't think that, and even the stories from the funeral, from my recollection, it wasn't getting involved in between. He never got between other people.
no, he didn't. He never interfered in it. And I
Mm.
think, it's sort of, I've met a lot of men like that they say, well, I stand back because I don't want any problems. I don't want any conflict.
I want to get
And
involved.
especially, he never wanted any conflict with Rose because he knew Rose was not happy. And obviously, he wasn't happy with Rose that much either. But, but there he was all the time. I loved the father. He
Mm.
was my favorite, except for what was Cecilia. I really liked her too. She was really a woman of her own. The other thing I really liked about this book was the language. I found sometimes it was really quite poetic. I really enjoyed that, but I'm a literature student, so
Yeah.
I really liked some of the language, sort of, and I skimmed all the baseball stuff too, because I know nothing about baseball. I didn't even know what baseball was.
Basketball.
Basketball.
Oh, sorry, whatever. To me, it's all the, oh yeah, it's basketball. They had to throw something in the basket. Yeah, baseball is even worse. You see? So, I'm totally out of it.
Terry, you had something?
Yeah, the father, the one thing that I just felt so bad about, because he really was there for friends and family, and yet he was a sad person. I mean, that he was an alcoholic, right? Or he drank a lot, one or the other, correct? I
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
think.
Yeah.
And also at work, he really didn't excel, I don't think, at work.
He was
He
not
was,
ambitious.
yeah. So I just felt, he had a lot to give, and he was there for others, and yet inside he still didn't have enough for himself.
I feel like it sort of begs the question, like Charlie's character kind of begs the question of like, what is success,
Yeah.
right? Because
Well,
Rose
yeah,
considered him to be a failure. I think
yeah,
that was fairly clear. And I think if Julia had been married to someone like her dad, she also would have considered him to be a failure. Um, in the same way that Julia considered, I think, William to be a failure,
Mhm.
but Sylvie
Right.
did not consider William to be a failure.
Right.
So it
No,
gives
and
this
this is,
idea too of like, what does it mean to be successful, right? So like, while Charlie was not, he did not excel at work, I mean, does that matter? Like, it matters in terms of how he was able to support his family. He wasn't really able to support his family financially. Rose, of course, supplemented by doing the gardening, trading off like different things in the neighborhood and taking in laundry. The However, like, saying that, like, it's like, but what does it mean to be a successful person? Like,
I
to be,
think
because
that I agree as far as, but he had to be the person who felt good about it. In other
yeah,
words, and he didn't. I mean,
I
even
don't know. That, like, I
he
don't
wouldn't
know.
be drinking. I'm sorry, I don't
You
think
don't
he
think
would be
he'd be
drinking.
drinking so much
No.
if he was
If
happier?
he was okay with having loving his family, having his friends,
Mm,
and saying for him, maybe work wasn't, as long as he had enough to support his family, it
mm,
wasn't he didn't need prestige, where some people do. He didn't
mm,
need that. But as I said, if he really felt that way, I don't think he would be drinking the same way. I
maybe.
don't think.
I didn't see him as a sad character. I didn't see him
Inside,
as, yeah, I know. I know what you're
don't
saying,
drink.
but we have agreed on almost everything, Terry, so far in this conversation. This will be our one area where we maybe don't so much. I didn't see him as a sad character.
I didn't
Um,
see him as a sad character either. I just saw him as a character who is doing the best that he can in the situation he's in.
Yeah.
And he does support the family, and I mean, he tries anyway. But I think he was actually quite content. Let's say he wasn't happy, but I think he was content, and he accepted what he got, and he tried to make the best of it. I really liked him a lot.
I liked him very much, but I still think, as I said, I
you think
think
he
that
was sad?
inside he wasn't. In other words, if I looked at him, I admired, to me, I admired a lot of who he was. And so, but I still feel that he inside, there was sadness in him. I don't think you drink to
Mm,
escape if you're okay. But I still think he appreciated what he had.
mm-hmm. Hmm.
You
Charlie,
think
our
you think
enigma, our
you think
enigma.
Julia's pick of William had anything to do with the way she saw her father? Like she wanted to be able to have a man that he could be more of excess, and she could mold him and she could push him. Do you think any of her decision to like marry William and to do what she did was because of how she saw her father as like not really a success, well, financially, whatever, I think maybe that has something to do with her relationship with William and why she chose him. I don't know.
Maybe. What do you guys think?
Fortunately, I don't understand. I never understand Rona.
Oh,
Oh,
Rona was asking
I have lots of trouble on Zoom.
Rona is asking if we think that Julia's choice of William as her husband has something to do with the way that her father was. So, like, to see someone that she could mold and direct and push into the certain sort of role
I
that
don't
she
think
was
at
looking
the
for.
beginning that was the case. I mean, she was a very strong personality, but I think she thought because he was this, what is it, basketball player, she knew he was going to university and she thought, I don't think at the beginning she really wanted to sort of push him. But eventually she had really no choice, did she? Because she wanted him differently than he was. And what I liked about the father he accepted William. He always gave him this little wink, you know, and said, just keep your mouth shut. Everything's going to be okay, this kind of thing. And this was another reason why I really liked him, because I felt very sorry for William, you know, he had a hard time.
And that's interesting because that brings up another element, like again with Charlie not getting involved between people's relationships. Like I also felt like he liked William from the get-go, but when Julia told Charlie that they were going to get married, he didn't approve. He didn't say that, and he didn't tell her not to. But at the same time, I think that he recognized, again, through his sort of acceptance of people for who they are, and like he saw that that was not going to be a
It's
great
not
match.
going to work. He probably
Why?
figured
Because it was like his marriage with Rose, a
I
strong,
don't
strong
know.
woman.
I don't know if it was because it was like his marriage with Rose so much as he saw, again, there was Julia's personality being what it was and William's personality being in what it was, that it was setting things up so that they couldn't each kind of continue on to be who they are. I think that he saw they wouldn't be able to
Because what
to
happened with him and
fulfill
Rose?
like their own potentials with each other.
He
And I
fought for
think
his
that
own
made him
marriage.
a little bit sad because he, of course, wants everyone to love each other and to be happy. But at the same time, he didn't say a word. And I think that, again, there's great wisdom in that. It's like the word interfering has come up a lot. And I know that personally, I never think that I'm interfering when I am. I'm going to try and really keep the word interfering in my head when I think I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help.
I'm just trying to figure out, you know what? I mean, you're having a discussion and everything, but at the end, maybe 20 pages when Izzy and Alice meet. I don't know there was a word there that should not have been in there actually, but it was shocking to see it. When Alice said, this dark skinned woman, young girl greeted her at the door.
Yeah, I was very surprised when I saw the dark skin. I was
shocked at that word dark. I'm saying to myself, all of a sudden they put in that. I don't know. That was an editor's mistake. I don't think they should have done that.
I agree.
I'm glad that you noticed it because I'm not sure some of these people who might have skipped that one. But I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that a word there for?
Yeah.
Yep. So I found that. Did you anybody else besides her catch it? I mean, like, no, hello.
I definitely glossed over it.
Wow.
Can you explain? I don't understand. What word? Where was it? What word?
At the bit when Alice and Izzy meet at the door, when she comes to the house.
The daughter,
right away says, this dark young woman came to the door to meet her. So obviously, she was black. Obviously,
did she say dark skinned though, or dark?
No,
dark.
It was dark.
There's no word. What do you mean dark? What does that mean?
Dark has to be skin. I mean,
can be dark haired because she was blonde. Alice was blonde, wasn't she?
Say that. No, you don't say dark. No, if you're talking about hair, you don't say dark.
Definitely say skin.
Skin.
No question.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
It dark.
It threw me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Why put it in now?
Yeah. And
Katie, can I figure out who is dark? I have really hard time.
Izzy. I think they're saying Izzy, Cecilia's daughter.
But where is it? Like,
that's now I'm looking in my book.
Oh, it's Rona.
So the father. So apparently the father, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the father.
Yeah. But why? Yeah.
When they first meet, when she comes to the door, when the funeral, when Sylvia dies, when she comes to Chicago, right there.
Well, nobody knows the father.
It doesn't matter. Even if she meant blonde or that's the wrong word to use.
Maybe.
That is. Doesn't matter. It's there. I promise you. Two of us saw it.
Well,
doesn't believe it.
We'll have to come back to it in email chains because our time, alas,
is up.
is
What's
Yeah,
next?
coming up.
And I have to go because I have a caregiver here and I have to get to the bank so I can pay her. I'm sorry, this is so,
Not at all. This is the end of
next
our
time
meeting.
I've
So
given, I give up everything.
we've had a wonderful discussion. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It will maybe continue by email later. Our next meeting will be in June on the 11th, and it will be a Read What You Want book club. I have been reading a ton lately, so I'm sure that we will have lots to talk about. So our next well, or rather, if you guys haven't been reading, then I will have a lot of time to fill up the air. Um, or a lot of material anyway. So the next book club meeting will be June 11th at 10:30. A Read What You Want book club. I look
Okay.
forward to seeing you all again then. I will let Heidi get off to do
I
your
have to
thing.
leave, okay? Take care.
Yes, go.
Thanks.
And I'm going
Thank
to end the
you.
recording here.